Okay, and welcome to the second episode of the Icons of Fright podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, the co-creator of Icons of Fright, Rob Galluzzo. With me is the other co-creator of Icons of Fright, Mike Cucinotta. Hello.
Hi.
Also,
Hello.
also with me is Jason Alvino.
Good morning.
Hello, good morning. And Adam Barnick.
Good to be here.
Is it Barnick?
No, this is good to be here. This is great to be here because I love seeing you guys, and I love talking about these times that we had together, especially in the early days of Icons of Fright. And we kind of talked about the why last time, like how it came together and why. This week, we're going to delve into the who of it all. Who did we first speak to? We kind of touched upon Betsy Palmer, which again was just a fun interview that we got from a convention appearance. But now we're going to cover the first 2 years. And I wanted to start with the very first interview ever. It's the first interview I ever conducted. It's the first interview that was on the website and the first that's in the book. And that's Tony Timpone from Fangoria.
Double T.
The double T. I had him saved in my phone that way for the longest time.
My God, isn't there a song for the double
Is
T?
there? Oh God,
I feel like there is.
But
That took
the
me
thing,
back.
I think I just wanted to talk about Tony for 2 seconds because he is,
We could talk about Tony for way more than 2 seconds.
of course,
Easily.
but he, for me, and I know we all have a similar story, but for me, first Fangoria Weekend of Horrors convention I went to in New York, I was probably about 15 years old, and he hosted and moderated all the panels. So to me, as a kid, he was Mr. Fangoria. I didn't have any understanding of the magazine or editors or writers or any of that. To me, he ran the whole thing. And I always made it a point at the end of every convention to stop him and thank him, just thank him for a great weekend. Hey, I had a great weekend. I love the magazine. I love this show. And years later, when we started Icons of Fright, he was the first person, I think Mike and I just talked about, like, hey, who should we talk to? Who do we have access to also? Because nobody knows who we are yet. And he was so incredibly kind with his time. He was very supportive. He also kind of would check in periodically and say, hey, I read this or I read that. Some of the interviews we'll talk about in this segment. And so, yeah, I mean, that's just Tony kind of, I miss the, I think we collectively try to be that way to anyone that's trying to express their love of the horror genre or get into criticism or get into film or whatever. I feel like we've kind of lost reverence for the previous generations. Like, we haven't, but to me, Tony was the last one that kind of gave us the stamp of approval to go on. And so anyway, that was 2004 with Tony Timpone. I mean, does anyone have any Fangoria memories, or do you remember the first time seeing him or interacting with him?
Tony, like, helped me out a lot. I owe that guy like so many steak dinners.
A lot of us do.
He's got to cash in one of these days. He helped us when me and Eddie and Marissa started Wicked Effects. He helped us get like our first gig.
Oh yeah. Well, man, by the way, Wicked Effects,
special makeup effects.
That all stemmed from Icons of Fright, kind of your experiences with Icon. I mean, you were always interested in effects.
Yeah.
But I feel like us starting to do the site and interviews kind of re-sparked that inspiration for you.
Yeah, I hadn't done it in a really long time. I was like super into it when I was younger, and then unfortunately I fell in love with music and playing in bands, which was way more work than it was fun. As Rob, but after that,
we were in a band together, Jay.
We were in a couple of bands.
Yeah, if you don't remember,
it's all a blur. But after that, I got really into special makeup, especially when we were, just kind of delving back in. Up until that point too, I hadn't really had a lot of friends that were into the same kind of stuff. But bringing it back to Tony, like when, I got seriously into it again, and after we did that Ted Boas film, which is a different story for another time.
Hell on earth.
Yeah, what a great fun time. That's a whole podcast in itself. But after that, two friends I met on that shoot, Eddie and Marissa, we started a special makeup effects company, and Tony got us our first like big like movie. Completely unaware if we were any good or not. Like he just did it because he is a great guy and very supportive of the scene. And I remember even seeing him after when we were doing Icons and all that stuff, he was always like, just, we don't have that. You're right, Rob. We don't have that kind of like elder statesman genre anymore,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what about you, Mike? Because were you aware of Tony before? Well, obviously through Fangoria, but interacting
through the conventions.
With him.
Through the conventions. And I didn't get to a Fangoria Weekend of Horrors till later. I didn't go to my first till I was 18. It was this January 97. But I remember him mostly being like kind of the host of those, because in the Weekend of Horrors, you'd show up and the first thing you would do is you'd all gather in the ballroom and Tony would come on and sort of lay out the agenda for the weekend. And then either him or Michael Gingold would roll into the best part of the Weekend of Horrors, which was all the trailers for all the movies that were coming up.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
I missed that.
That was great.
Back then, kids, you couldn't just watch a trailer online.
No.
You had to wait and see them in person. And it
see
was
them
incredible.
in person twice a year at the Weekend of Horrors. And I just always remember Tony and Michael, they both had a presence. They both show up. They were impeccably dressed. Tony has the best smile, a smile that'll reach right across the room, and it was never, he's always like glad to be there. There's never a condescension to Tony. He really set the mood and greeted you and got you ready for the next 2 days of madness. And then of course it was fun to, bump into him throughout the weekend and interact a little bit with the head of Fangoria. And of course his support in the beginning. I mean, I think we talked about one of the reasons we did want to do the interview too, is also just to sort of like mine him for advice on how to go about doing what we were about to do. And it really, I think he really helped us out. He really gave us a leg up and some legitimacy immediately.
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost instantly.
Well, what's fun about his interview, if you reread it now, because we cover a lot of fun stuff, but look, everybody's story, one of the fun things about doing all these interviews for all of us is that everyone's story is different and they're all inspiring in different ways, because there's no clear path to the success of what you want to do in the entertainment industry, especially when it comes to the horror world. But if I remember, I didn't remember this until I read it, but I think Tony was doing freelance articles for like local newspapers and sci-fi, famous monsters. He was submitting things to them, inquired about a job via Starlog, because Starlog owned Fangoria, and they didn't have anything. But then a month later, they hired him to do like copy editing. And I want to say within a month, like the head editor in chief quit. And so basically he got pushed almost into that role that he kept for like 15 years or whatever. Yeah. And that's just how it happens sometimes. Right place, right time. And like, boom, now you're kind of the editor in chief of a horror magazine. So yeah. What about you, Adam? Did you end up going to the conventions fairly early? And
yeah, one of the things, especially when looking back at our past chapters, where not only were we talking about our stories, but the interviews with people like Joe Lynch and whatnot, all the East Coasters, is we were all at these same cons essentially, and growing up but having didn't know each other, and I just wish there was a lot of like video coverage like there would be now, where we could like go through the crowd and see like, I guess like our parents dragging us around, because I started, once I discovered Fango and started that sort of second, like the teen leap into horror, which was really a lot about makeup effects interest, which, the magazine was just nonstop that back then. Tony was like, I mean, you guys, the smile lights up the room. It's like when you get there, like his sort of joy at having all of us weird people together is it's like he felt like he's up there like standing 10 feet tall, like I'm home. And we were all like, I'm home. I think I used to call it my one fun weekend a year when I was 14. I don't know if I would like track him down at the end of each con, but he also, what was cool is, I mean, he must have been so exhausted by the end of those conventions, because it's like, not only is he like emceeing and interviewing, in between every panel, it felt like he was working the floor. And of course, everybody wants to talk to him, and he's looking at merch. So I always got to say hi to him. And it was incredible that he always remembered this kid's name. Like I would come back like a year later, hey, Adam, how's it going? And we weren't having like in-depth conversations where I would get that kind of impression at age 15, you know? But it always continued that way. And he's always been open. When I first started coming to go to school in New York City, my first effects gig was the assistant effects artist in a vampire theater troupe. So I was like mixing Carosir blood in my tub, like bathtub gin. And we pitched him on doing the live theater show at the convention. And it didn't work out, but I mean, like I think I hand wrote or typed him a letter, sent it to Fango, and he reached out just to kind of come and let us pitch, you know?
Yeah.
He didn't have to do that, you know? And then, you know, as around the time period you guys are getting to know me, which I guess we'll touch on, Fangoria does the Blood Drive series, the short film search for like America's Best Short Horror.
Which is really how we met you, because your film was in the second one.
Yeah, and Tony's and a guy named Tim Hinesley are the two producers and judges of that. And I don't think he necessarily even knew, seeing my name, that I was that Adam. Right. But once, you know, my film won and he got to know us all, I mean, like, oh, actually, yeah, no, even before that, I think he even says on the commentary on that disc, like I watched this kid grow up at our conventions. I had no idea he was this talented filmmaker. So that's really the start. That's the foot in the door for me. So, I mean, like Tony has, you know, Jay, you and I have to split those steak dinners we're going to have because and you know, such a supportive dude.
Yeah, and I mean, I know we're talking about him quite a lot at the top of this episode, but I also wanted to contextualize what the convention scene was like there now, because you know, this isn't a criticism of how it is these days. It's just now it's such a tremendous business, and fandom is a business. You know, if you want to meet people or take a photo with them, it is part you have to save and allot your allowance for it. For us, the Fangoria Weekend of Horrors when we were younger were literally promotional vehicles for the studios. So you didn't get charged anything because a major studio would have like Coppola's Dracula, right? And, you know, I'm drawing a blank. Is that Warner Brothers? But whatever studio it was would send Greg Cannon, did the effects, the late Greg Cannon, and Gary Oldman or one of the stars to go talk about that movie, show footage, and then they would sign immediately after, you know, posters, like promotional posters. So they weren't there all weekend. They would do a panel, and then at the side of the stage, they would sign posters for whatever they were promoting. You know, and that was great because when you're 15, 16 and you don't have a lot of money, and also you want to buy theatrical one sheets. I remember I was hunting that Friday the 13th 8 band poster, the I Heart New York with Jason, you know, cutting through the heart. You're like, oh, we can't sell that as the poster, but you'd find it at Fangoria or even VHS tapes or whatever you're looking for. So it was a different world. It was a different business. And it's not that I miss it. It's just, we're just trying to contextualize because it inspires so much of what you're going to read in the book.
Yeah.
It kind of was our internet. It's like suddenly you're exposed to every voice, every table, every merch. Oh, this exists. They made a model of that. Oh my God, the script for this movie's out already. You know, it's like, that was an unparalleled amount of access to genre stuff back when you couldn't find it.
And those were twice a year. There was always a New York and a Burbank show, right?
Yeah,
so,
and occasionally they dip into Chicago and do that stuff, but there was you always could count on New York and LA. You know, before the other thing that I think is important to talk about, especially with 2004, the first year of Icons, is kind of what was going on in the horror genre, because you know, Mike and I used to talk about this all the time, but at that point, even though we were celebrating the genre or the genre past, I was fed up with with what the genre had to offer at that moment. The movies that were in theaters were the first Alien versus Predator, Exorcist: The Beginning, things that I just thought like, oh, the genre's dead. There's just no,
Right.
there's nothing good. And what we discovered, and again, it's all beautiful coincidence, is we went to a convention and saw Dante Tomaselli, who is a filmmaker out of Jersey, and he showed a scene from Desecration with a pair of scissors attacking a nun, and a pretty lengthy trailer to his second movie, Horror. And I think we were all pretty blown away by that, because here's a guy in New Jersey that we'd never heard of doing Dario Argento-esque violent scenes in his independent movies. So he was one name, and the other was Stephen Mena with Malevolence, because there were, people say, how do you find movies now? Well, back then I went into a comic book store and I literally saw 8x10 ad for Malevolence playing at our local theater. And it had the Anchor Bay logo. So I didn't even know it was a new movie. I just assumed like, oh, cool, it's Anchor Bay. Anchor Bay does, at that time, they were re-releasing Evil Dead and Halloween, and they put out Madman. So I see this ad for Malevolence and just assume, oh, this looks like a Madman type movie. We should go see it. Much to our surprise, Mike and I went with a few friends, and we were blown away. It was really scary. It was really interesting and unique, and the right way to kind of remake all the classics that we loved. And Malevolence is one that we kept bringing people back to. And as soon as we found out that Steven was local, we just like hunted him down, because I think I read one quote somewhere that he said, oh yeah, I intended it as a trilogy and this is the middle one. And Mike and I were like, well, what happens in the first one? What happens in the third one? And so we like cornered him at a screening. We're like, you have to tell us the trilogy, and but that, so getting to chat with people like Betsy Palmer, like vintage classic stars from the horror genre, and then meeting these guys, that kind of really shaped what we thought Icons of Fright could be. Like, oh, cool, we'll talk about the past, but also let's showcase and focus on these up and coming. Like, there's nothing better than being able to turn your friends onto a new movie, right? And so I felt like we were. And there's going to be a lot of this going forward, so apologies in advance, but I felt like we were lucky that we crossed paths with certain films and filmmakers, and we just felt like it was our duty to talk about them. So that's what was going on. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but before Adam started contributing to our website, you had your own website, adambarnick.com or .net, and you were interviewing filmmakers just because you were interested in talking to filmmakers. And I want to say that you talked to Dante and Steven.
I did. I kind of have a parallel discovery of both of them. But funny enough, we were all at the same convention seeing these things, and not knowing each other yet. I had, I think it started with my own website. I had just made a brand new website. I'm like, I have to get some sort of presence on the World Wide Web. And I was doing interviews. I remember like asking and planning smart, in-depth questions at the Fango cons, and not just ask like, when's Jason coming back, but like something, a little more like in depth. I wanted to learn. I wanted to know. So I had that idea of doing that on my website, to learn more. Like I'm just getting started in the business and I don't know anybody. Who's out there? What's it like? Can I speak to and promote at the same time? And Dante, I don't know if I first heard of him at that convention. I think I already had, but I definitely really went deep dive, in-depth smart for an interview with him. And we really connected over that. Steve and I actually met I was working at a screenwriting seminar I would do once a year. I mean, like I was the assistant to the screenwriting guru. His name was David Freeman. It was an awesome course called Beyond Structure. And Stephen was there, but I met him because we were at lunch, just sort of like the instructor's assistant's table. And Stephen like worked his way to that table because that's, he's just a relentless, awesome dude and gets things done. So he got there to sort of pick the instructor's brain a little more. And he started telling me about Malevolence. And must have offered to do an interview. I was also writing then all of a sudden for a site called Entertainment Insiders, einsiders.com.
Yeah.
I was working for them before any kind of official Icons of Fright stuff. But I remember Steven arranging like a theatrical private screening for me of Malevolence. Like, who am I? He's doing that. And I'm like, holy shit, this is frightening and awesome. We have to talk about it. So yeah, probably around the time that you guys are discovering this movie that was building a name for itself for a year before it came out, I was doing that track on my end as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was really incredible. And then, there's two turning points for me in the first 2 years of Icons. Number one was, most of the interviews that Mike and I had done, for the most part, were email. We were still a little shy about, getting on the phone with people. But, somebody like Betsy, we spoke on the phone and she was lovely. And you probably won't be able to tell if you read the book, but I can tell which early interviews are email.
I can tell.
Yeah. But I think at the end of the first year, we talked to Brad Lorre, who played Michael Myers in Halloween Resurrection, which is not a well remembered or liked Halloween entry, but he was very good in it and he was very kind. And I remember he was somebody we got on the phone with that was just overtly so cool and kind. He's a Canadian stuntman that got to do
that was a great
Here, yeah. I think he's based here in Vancouver.
Well, yes, he is. And he done a lot of interesting things, but what was, I think that that started to get, because Halloween has a fan base unlike any other. And so I remember after that, I'd start getting anonymous emails through the website about, well, can you talk to, I don't know, George Wilbur from Part 4? Can you talk to this person from Halloween? We'd also done Ellie Cornell, who was kind of, everybody's crush from Halloween 4. So starting to get Halloween people early on was kind of what got people's attention. Actually, Anthony Massey, who now is a producer and doing all these great board games, at the time ran a Halloween website called the MyersHouse.net. It was one of the first Halloween.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah,
it was one of the first big ones. He had, we were friendly at that point already, but he had reached out to me and said, like, I love the Brad Lorre interview because you asked him what was like the one stunt he was scared to do, and I'd never thought of that. Like, as a stuntman, like, you are literally risking your life every time you do one of these gags, and to hear that perspective of, well, I'm scared every time, it was interesting. So there was that, and then in year 2 was Mike got to talk to Ben Chapman, who legitimately is one of the he is the icon of fright.
Yeah,
the icon of fright.
Mike, do you remember how that even happened? Was that from a convention or?
That was from a Chiller convention. Yeah, Ben had done an appearance at Chiller, and we went up to his table and we reached out. He was living in Hawaii, so this was it was coming out a long way. At least I remember it being a Chiller convention. I mean, I could be wrong. I could have just reached out to him through his website. He had a website that was going on where you could send in merchandise or order pictures, and he would sign it and send it back. But I think it surprised us that there was still a Universal monster around, because our experience with Universal monsters at conventions is usually the children of the actors who are making appearances and showing off memorabilia and telling stories. So when we just, it sounds dopey. Oh, we didn't know he was alive, but we didn't know that they were around. Well, Rico Browning was also around. So you have to remember, he's just for context, so everyone is Ben Chapman and Rico Browning both played the creature from the Black Lagoon. They're both in the same movie. They're in the original movie. Rico is in the underwater scenes. He's a professional diver. He's an underwater sports guy. And he's a animal trainer. He did a lot of aquatic work. And Ben Chapman was the actor who was in the suit on the ground and on all the water scenes that were shot in the studio. So what was fascinating was talking to him about just his career in those, as kind of a scrappy little day player in Universal. He wasn't a well-known actor. He was just a contract player. Did a couple of things and ended up in the rubber suit on Creature, and he also had like a military background, and
it was
to
me that was the most fascinating,
endlessly fascinating character.
Yeah, that was the most fascinating part of your interview for me, reading back, is like, and it's funny because I don't know why when anybody did an interview with any other site, it's almost like they stuck to their talking points for whatever they were promoting. But for whatever reason, when we got to them, we got the whole life story. So
you
for
wanted to ask them about the whole life story. That was the whole point. The whole point was to just talk, was not just about the movie, was who are you?
Yeah.
Who are you? That was really what we were asking in our interviews. Who are you? And, what brought you here?
Well, after his wartime experiences is when he got into dancing and stage,
dance.
And having just doing, think about it, a guy in Hawaii just getting up on stage to dance or whatever, and that leading to film work. I thought that was all fascinating. It contextualizes the person before you see them as that monster, But yeah, and that was, you talked to him on the phone for quite a bit, because I remember
over almost 2 hours. Yeah.
Well, and what ties into that is, so we're going into year 2. We finally got somebody like Ben Chapman, who is a legitimate icon of fright. Jay has started contributing to the site, and Jay and I come from a band background, and the way that you promote your band, long before you can advertise on any sort of social media, you make flyers or whatever. And Jay came up with this great idea up until that point, and I have it here with me, is we were going to a Chiller convention. They were the biggest at that point. They were bigger than Fangoria Weekend of Horrors.
Yeah.
The Chiller conventions were huge. Sure. They were in New Jersey. They expanded beyond the genre, so you got TV stars, and it was a big audience. And we had printed out, I can't remember the number, maybe 100, maybe 1,000, but there were these little mini magazines that we made where we had just a page or two of the Betsy Palmer interview, a page or two of the Ben Chapman. And Mike, refresh my memory, because on the front of it is a Freddy Krueger image that was done by Steven
Ciancanelli.
There you go.
Steven Ciancanelli, who did that, and he also did the was that our gateway image? He also did the creature.
Yeah,
he did the Betsy Palmer.
Yes.
Steven Ciancanelli is an artist here in New York. Yeah. That was Steven.
Steven did this Freddy image, which in March of 2004, this was all that was available on iconsofright.com. It was our teaser image. And by April, when we officially launched with interviews, was when you could click in. But Steven did a lot of incredible work for us. The Betsy Palmer holding a baby Jason. That was
I have the original of that. He gave me that a few years ago. Yeah.
Incredible. And by the way, he's on Instagram. We'll have to look it up. He's on Instagram. We'll tag him. So you could, and he's still doing incredible artwork like this.
I mean, Steve was, that was really important to the site too, because you show up there and get this beautiful original art as well, which, Frank, no one else had a great artist like Steven. He was really a big help to us.
Timing. We had interesting interviews. We were handing this out at the convention. This gave us a nice little boost.
We had a table. We rented a table at the
that's right.
Yeah.
It was one of the combined Fangoria Weekend of Horrors and Chillers. Yeah,
I remember that. We wore suits.
Yeah, that might be a little bit later.
We did.
I don't ever remember wearing a suit.
You wore a nice shirt and tie.
No, I did wear a nice shirt and tie. I do also remember my strategy for the convention was to change outfits twice, and I feel like I innovated that. If you recall, I had my daytime outfit and had my nighttime outfit.
Yes, you did.
So, and I encouraged everybody else to participate.
At nighttime, when we go out for adult beverages,
we have to get into those. Those nights are. Those are coming up. The wacky and fun.
Almost there.
But then we're not there yet. We're not there yet because we're not getting invited anywhere yet. So,
well,
but that table, that magazine, that was critical. I mean, we had the whole weekend. We handed out hundreds of those things. And Rob, those things would keep coming back to us. Yeah. We would go to other shows and we would find them. People would have them. It was unbelievable. I remember the first time someone came up to us.
We also made it pocket size, so you could just grab one.
You could just carry it around. Yeah.
It was perfect. When you buy the book, there's a little sample of it at the very tail end, which is kind of cool, just to re-see it as a relic in time. But
I also remember the other thing. Okay, so I remember the table, and I remember all that. Okay, but I specifically remember we were extremely aggressive in our promotion technique. We didn't really stand behind the table. We were in front of the table, grabbing people as they passed, shoving it in their hands, walking around. Hey, you want to see something cool? Giving them the thing, walking away. We also had pins. Rob, you also
Oh yeah,
had pins.
I still have them. I still have a few left over.
Yeah. Oh, that's
Yeah.
But we were very aggressive with our promotion technique,
Right.
and I don't think usually in those situations, the people. You go to a table, there's somebody behind it. Do you want to talk to me? Yes, no, okay. But
Jay's running up to me like, "Hey man, you got to check out iconsofright.com. Just go there."
Just whispering to people as we play iconsofright.com. What'd you say? Oh, I said iconsofright.com.
I mean,
Yeah.
it seems like such a small thing, but also that little magazine, we could hand that to people we wanted to talk to and show them what we were doing. So their dopey manager sitting at the table can flip through it and go, "Oh, hey, I got to talk to these guys. These guys seem to know what they're doing. Fucking idea what we're doing." So, but
it appeared that way, and
appearances are everything. Which is why I got to change
Lesson
outfits
learned.
twice at a convention.
Yeah.
Well, the other big turning point, in my opinion, at the beginning, and this is now going into year 2, which is 2005, is Jay. We would talk about who do we want to talk to that it hasn't been out there in a while, and how can we get to them? And we have a couple examples of that. But Jay was the first one to say, "You know what? I want to talk to Bob Clark. Bob Clark is this great director. He's literally done a film that has been the definitive film of each genre. So Black Christmas for the slasher genre, Christmas Story for Christmas movies, Porky's for comedy, Murder by Decree, the ultimate Jack the Ripper story. And I don't even remember how we got to him. It might have been an IMDb Pro thing where, let's look up a manager or something.
Yeah, but I don't remember either. I honestly don't remember how contact was made.
Yeah, you had been talking to him for a while before the Gray shoot in LA in 2006, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay,
the interview was the first time. You did a pretty lengthy interview with him, which is in the book in its entirety. And look, nobody was talking to him about his career at that moment in time. Nobody. So, Jay, what do you remember about reaching out to him? And he comes across on the page as incredibly sincere and flattered that you're talking to him. So,
I honestly don't remember how the initial connection was made. I don't remember. I just remember being extremely excited. It was a phone interview that I think you came over and we taped it on your thing.
Maybe
tape recorder thing. And just a super sweet guy. I think at the time, right as we were talking to him, was when he was explaining like they were going to remake Black Christmas, and I don't think anybody really knew that at that point, or maybe they did. I'm not entirely sure. But personally, I mean, he was just a great guy. I wish, it's unfortunate hindsight. Sure, that interview was really cool interview. I wish it was longer in hindsight, because we had from there, developed this friendship, and we spoke many times that I wish I would have taped him, but it was just like a kind of friendly conversation, not only with Bob, and I don't even think this was, I think we were kind of just wrapped up in other things, but through Bob, I also met his producer, Victor Salnicki, who is like this legendary producer of like early Cronenberg stuff. He did The Breed, he did Videodrome, and I was talking with him and we were talking about ideas for movies, and I'm like, I was doing makeup effects at the time, and he was pitching me this idea he had for a movie that he's like, well, you should go write it. And I'm like, I'm not a writer, at that time, at that time, it's just so odd how life just kind of comes that full circle thing. But I did start dabbling in it, and then much later we'll get into like the shift from makeup effects into screenwriting. But those two guys were just so cool and supportive with just for the sake of being cool and supportive. Over going back to Bob, like we had spoken a lot. He had told us, after the interview, and again, I look back on an interview and I felt like it was so much longer because we had spoken for a long time. And I guess it's because I'm like mixing up things in my memory of like, well, I remember we had spoken about this, but it's not in the interview because it was another time. We were just like on the phone, like talking. He was a night owl, so he would call me really late, and we would just talk about stuff. He'd have ideas. He wanted to run something by me. Like, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? He was just getting into like computer stuff and didn't quite understand the internet at this point,
Yeah,
but he was
well,
excited about this resurgence that his career was kind of like coming up again,
Right.
and his past achievements were being celebrated. And he had mentioned the Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things remake. He was planning, and I read some of it. He let me read some of it, and then fast forward to that shoot in California where he came to visit, and this was maybe like a year into our little makeup effects thing as Wicked Effects.
Yeah.
And he was like, you're gonna do makeup effects. You're gonna do some of the makeup effects for Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things. Like, because I want his vision was he wanted a lot of makeup effects studios to work on the same project. Some, we would take one big gag, another studio take another gag, whatever, like old school, like kind of like Nightmare
The Elm
4
Streets.
style.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I remember about the Bob Clark stuff, and I'm not going to make Icons take all the credit, but I think it was all a beautiful timing thing. Like you said, the Black X mess was coming.
Yeah.
The 2006 one, it was about to start production. But I do know for a fact that it was because of our interview that Tony Timpone, who was checking our website, invited him for kind of a lifetime achievement at a Fangoria Arts.
Yeah.
But, Bob wasn't doing Fangoria cons, but they, within that year, I think 2005 or whatever, 2006, they got to do a Q&A. I took a bunch of pictures and I felt like Bob was starting to get his due within the horror world, because then, of course, the other websites, Bloody Disgusting, Dread Central, everyone was starting to cover Bob and his interest in remaking Children Should Play with Dead Things. Again, I thought it was interesting that he really wanted to remake his first movie, like kind of bookend his career at that point. And then I guess it was 2000, cutting ahead just a little bit, it was 2006 when we were when Jay did the effects for the short film version of Paul Soleit's Grace, and which eventually became a feature. And all of us were pretty much out there. Adam, you were there to do a little bit of behind the scenes. Jay was working on it with Wicked Effects. I just happened to be in town and I wanted to kind of see it come together. And as Jay mentioned before, Bob was a night owl. And so he called Jay and said, hey, I'm going to come and visit you on the set, but it won't be until, I don't know, 11 p.m. or whatever. So it was really late at night. So I'll never forget, and there's a picture of it in the back of the book.
Yeah.
Bob just showed, he was like this goofy, he was Ralphie from a Christmas Story.
Yeah.
He absolutely was Ralphie, because he was like this, like, hey guys, like kind of like this goofy uncle. And I'll never forget, he showed up by himself. He drove himself in the middle of the night to this warehouse where you guys are doing the effects for Wicked. He came in and he sat and told us stories for probably an hour. But I remember specifically, he was acting out deleted scenes from Porky's.
Oh, that's right.
He's like, there's a part in Porky's where what's her name? But ball breaker, the coach grabs a thing that's sticking out of the wall. And I remember Bob, he's like, what was he in his 50s, 60s? He's acting out like that he had a shot like this of the woman with her legs up, and he's like, that was too much for the censors and we had to cut that out. And he was just telling us such, it was a joy that was the only time I got to spend with him, but it was obviously you'd already formed a rapport with him, that stemmed from that interview. He was so kind to us. He gave us his time. He signed a DVD of God, what's
Death Dream, right?
Death Dream for Paul. Because you and Paul were on set somewhere else, shooting on location. So he signed the DVD for him. And I have a photo of the two of you talking where he's holding, I think, the baby head or something you're doing. Yeah. And I remember that being the moment where he's like, you know what, you guys got the talent. You should be doing children. You shouldn't play with dead things with me. Yeah. And unfortunately, shortly, not that long after that is when he was, him and his son Ariel were killed in a car accident by a drunk driver.
Yeah.
I think it was just like
and that's that.
months after that.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was that. And all his work kind of, we have the concept art in the book that you and
Mike
Carlo had started to do for Children Should Play with Dead Things. And I'd heard rumblings, much later, I'd worked on a bunch of short films with Drew Daywalt. And at one point, he was writing a version for Tom Savini to direct of Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things for Fangoria. Obviously that never came to fruition, but probably for the best, to be honest.
Let me tell my favorite. Okay. Had things gone a different way, and there's pictures of this in the book, just to kind of put what's in the book into context. The gag he wanted us to do, one of the gags he wanted us to do. Now, he wanted to write this as like a legit like horror comedy. And what I read and what he told me was like really funny. Like he was very protective of it. I didn't read the whole thing. He just read us pages. It was at the Fangoria thing. He was like, come upstairs. I have pages I want to show you. I want to explain to you, because, like he was just very protective of it. He didn't want it getting out. Sure. No problem. So the scene he wanted us to do the gag for was like, one of the characters, some, hot chick character or whatever, gets cornered by this big fat, like, what's the right word I'm looking for? Horny zombie, right? Which you see, he's this big, big guy, big fat bloated corpse guy. He cornered her and he's looking at her very lasciviously, and he undoes his pants and he drops his pants, but it's all rotted. Everything is gone. It's like he's this big fat torso on these two little sticks of skeleton legs, and that was the gag. He looks down, he has nothing there. The girl's like disappointed, or like, really, very, very funny. Very funny scene, and that's what I started to build maquettes for. Mike did, obviously, like, concept art for it. Bob loved it. Like, I had no idea how we were going to pull it off, but that was the idea. This other idea, this other gag.
I remember the vegan one. Is that the one?
Yeah, the vegan one.
I remember he told us about his vegan zombie that was scared of everybody.
Well, like then it's like the tables were turned, and this other zombie is cornered by a bunch of the survivors who are ready to kill him, and the vegan zombie is like non-verbally trying to communicate that he doesn't eat people. He eats leaves. He starts taking leaves off the tree and eating grass, like to show that he's not trying to eat them, and they kill him or whatever. But yeah, it's a shame. I know they had, tried to, get it going again. Something I do remember, we were talking about Christmas Story, and he told us that they've been trying to get him to do a sequel to Christmas Story for years, and he refused. Yeah. Christmas Story and Murdered by Decree, he never wanted to touch again.
Yeah.
He just wanted it to be, he's like, we tried doing there was kind of like a Christmas Story sort of sequel. What was it called?
Well, there are two now.
There has their names.
Yeah. Before the new one that came out.
It was called It Runs in the Family, or
Keep It in
Summer Story.
Something like that. Yeah, right. He said he had tried it, didn't want to do it again. But yeah, he said, he's like, I won't, they keep offering me a bunch of money. I don't want to do it. And then after he passed years later, there's that second Christmas Story. I haven't seen it yet though.
Well, they did a Christmas Story 2 with like an all new cast, and then HBO Max did one with Ralphie, the actor who played Ralphie. That's like an official sequel. That one's okay, but yeah, again, it's like I don't know. It's tough when you do a sequel to something and you don't have the original filmmaker involved. You know? That's kind of the bummer of it. But
great guy though. Just rest in peace, like you said. Like great guy. Yeah, awesome guy.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to touch upon with year 2 in 2005, I mean, we had really good interviews. We had Patricia Tallman, we had Don Shanks, who played Michael Myers in Halloween 5, which I think we got him at a Monster Palooza. I'm pretty sure because I have a photo of him at his table, and I think we just went over to his table and he gave us, whatever, the half hour to talk to us. But the one that really stands out, and I love reading it now because I think up until that point, like Mike and I, we loved hearing the rumors. We loved hearing what movies could have been, and why these decisions were made, that we got what we got, etc. But really, Dan Farrens, who I knew a little bit, when I sat down with him for Icons, he blew my mind because Dan Farrens wrote Halloween 6. And he was the first creative I talked to that literally told us, that's not what I wrote. This is what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
I wrote it with Christopher Lee in mind to be Donald Pleasance's arch nemesis. And you're like, what? And like the studio thought he was too old and blah, blah, blah. And then Christopher Lee does Lord of the Rings and, and Star Wars and all this stuff. That was the first, I mean, that's the first time a creative basically, forgive the expression, talked a little shit. Like, kind of giving his
really unloaded.
And, but you know what? I think indirectly, look, he would have done that eventually, but we because of that interview, a couple of years later, we'd only done a few of these. We did a bootleg commentary, which basically Dan and I sat and watched the movie, and he kind of talked through all the things that he wrote and wanted and intended. Yeah. And we put that as an MP3 so you can sync it up and watch it with the movie. Mm-hmm. And now, all these years later, that producer's cut, which is still not what he wrote, but it's definitely considered maybe the better version of the movie. It's a little bit more, pays more honor to Donald Pleasance since he died before they could do the reshoots. That is out now on a pristine 4K edition.
That was when you had to track down as a bootleg. You had to track that down as a bootleg at a Fangoria convention on some shoddy VHS tape. Yeah, just to see
the producer's cut.
The producer's cut.
Yeah, so that I remember being kind of a big deal, and again, I think we were lucky that we tapped into a lot of people from the Halloween franchise. Like we were talking to Friday the 13th people too. Like I have a very distinct memory of our phone call with Larry Zerner, which was one of the first ones, and we were like such dorks, you know. And we're like, hey, you gave him his mask, man. And he's like, I didn't. I was just there. He took it, stuff like that. But leading into, we're going to save some of the stuff about 2006 and on for next episode, because that is 2006 to me is the year we exploded, because we're talking to Oz Perkins and James Wan, and we sat with Adam Green and Steve Niles at a Fangoria Weekend of Horrors. Like it was really the moment. I got invited to our first press junket for The Omen. Mm-hmm. That was really the moment that everything started to come together. But to tee that up, this is when Adam comes into the picture, because in the same way that we were kind of excited about Stephen Mena and Dante Tomaselli, we were already talking to Adam because we'd seen his film mainstream through the Fangoria Blood Drive 2. And I think you were already, at least you were doing first looks for us maybe or whatever. But my memory is you were the one that came to us and said, guys, Hatchet and Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon. These are the two that you have to be on top of. Sure. And I recently went back and read your first looks.
Both those movies?
For both those movies, because I think you, at least in terms of who we knew, you were the first person to see Hatchet. You saw it at Tribeca where it premiered.
The first screening world premiere, and it was completely as a lark. I was connected and doing some writing for you guys at that point, and this is probably April, May 2006, and I know we had shot the Grace short, and And my editor at Entertainment Insiders, that's who I was doing the press for. His name was Jonathan Hickman. He's like, hey, do you want to see a horror film tonight? Because he's just going through the catalog, seeing like, what do we have access to? We're just doing press for Tribeca, just general press. And he finds Hatchet. And I haven't heard of this at all, but I like, oh, wow. And it's got like, it's listing the horror icons who do show up in the movie. And I'm like, wow, let's check it out. So, 3 hours later, we're in the very first screening of Hatchet ever, filming Adam Green introducing himself to the whole world. And we're like, what's Dee Snider doing here? We'll get the very first Dee Snider story, 10 minutes. Green talked a lot and had everybody in the palm of his hand. We filmed it. And I remember at the end of the screening, the tape getting confiscated by the security. And I tried to talk Jonathan into swapping out the tape with a blank tape. And it didn't work. But so we filmed history and then it was taken from us, but we at least were witness to it. But yeah, I mean, that screening was a rock concert. You've seen how Hatchet plays live. That's the very first time with no one knowing any idea what they're in for. And I think my favorite part of it, especially having grown up an effects junkie, is going, oh my God, how the hell did they do that in Kill After Kill? They're just like unbelievably magic show tricks in it. And I feel like the very next day I had done coverage for Entertainment Insiders, but I talked to you guys and I was like, I have to write a first look. This movie is nuts. You're going to love it.
You were very excited about it. And I mean, your first look is on our website. If you go to iconsofright.com, it'll loop over to my site and you could still find your first look review from 2006 or whatever. And I mean, it made me excited because I was like, well, Adam is really like high on this movie. And what I remember, the irony is I went, and we'll talk about it next episode, but a bunch of us went to Weekend of Horrors in LA because at that point we felt we could get more interviews. Basically, we can get more coverage and do more for the website if we go to that one because everyone lives here. They showed 2 of the kills during the panel. And one is the infamous. And by the way, Mike, what was happening? It was like Japanese horror movies were being remade. It was like a lot of CG.
A lot of the Japanese horror movies, a lot of CG. You weren't seeing. There were no slasher movies. We weren't getting any slasher movies.
Let alone practical effects. Yeah,
right.
Let alone practical effects, and it was the very early days of CG, so the stuff was really just. It wasn't good, and none of it has aged very well. But Adam showed that clip, those 2 clips. The woman getting her, it just brought the house down. And I think from he walked in that room, nobody knew what was going on, and he as you said, Adam, he left a rock star. He left there a rock star. Yeah.
I think. What was I going to say about that? No, go ahead. I'll have a smart point to make when I remember it.
Well, and then what was funny for me is all I had seen. So I read your review. I saw the clips. We interviewed Adam and for Icons, and he was great. He was also one of those filmmakers that was just super candid about how the industry works, which I think was the first time we heard of that. Like he'd gotten in trouble for talking about the fact that he did a draft of Cabin Fever 2. Which I totally forgot about. I think I texted you, Adam, saying, hey, have you ever read Adam's Cabin Fever 2? I'm kind of curious about it. But then I think it was that week that I was there, he showed us his second film, Spiral.
We sat all together. Yeah, we sat
at Stinky Dance. At Stinky Dance House. Yeah. And so basically the first movie we saw Adam Green do was Spiral, which is a total 180 from Hatchet. So... I think honestly, Mike, you and I getting to see that first made Hatchet all the better because there is that thing about seeing a horror movie like that where you might think, oh, this is I don't mean this as an insult, but it's kind of the same with a found footage movie where it's like, okay, but can they really make a movie? Because it's like they're doing.
You just make an assumption based on the first thing. Yeah,
sure.
Right.
But because we saw Spiral and I still think it's the better movie. I mean, I have more fun with Hatchet, but Spiral is like a really good Hitchcockian sort of thriller with a jazz score. It's like so freaking weird. So seeing that first and then going to Hatchet was like such a unique experience. And again, it fueled our excitement because now here's another filmmaker that we could talk about.
Can we just acknowledge? Can we just at this point for getting out to LA and doing these Weekend of Horrors? Can we please just acknowledge Camp Spooky Dan? because we were all at
Yeah.
Spooky Dan's house for at least 2 or 3 years. We would just show up in LA and end up there for a week, and you never know who would show up, or what was going to be in his garage. So
So Dan, Spooky Dan is Dan Walker and his wife Tammy, and I'd met him. It was so funny. I specifically remember I met him at a Fangoria Weekend of Horrors in Chicago about a month before Paul was doing the short film version of Grace, and it was Tim Sullivan was doing a panel for I think 2001 Maniacs. And he called out Spooky Dan. He's like, "Oh, there's Spooky Dan." And I turn around and I see this guy with long hair who looks kind of scary, like he's in Cradle of Filth or something. And so my initial reaction is like, "That's a scary guy," And then later that night, I end up talking to him, and I'm like, "Oh, he's not scary. He's just spooky." Like now I get it. He's like the nicest guy on the planet. And by the way, he didn't know what was interesting about this time period. Is you weren't interacting with people online. You weren't finding kindred spirits. The whole reason Mike and I started a website is we were the only 2 guys on Long Island that knew who Dario Argento was at that time,
Mm-hmm.
So we met Spooky. Spooky, we immediately kind of had a rapport, and we said, "Hey, we're coming out in a month, but we don't have anywhere to stay." And he's like, "Well, you could just crash, I have a guest room in the garage. Just crash with me." Sure. And as Mike said, it became Camp Spooky Dan, because we'd be there and you never knew it was going to happen. Like, I'll text Adam Green and see if he can bring over his new movie. And he did. So we were like, this is amazing.
Was Dave Parker living in the back at that point?
It might have been Ryan Rotten.
It was either Ryan.
No, that was before. Nobody was back there. We were
nobody was back there. Okay. It was a guest room, and eventually Ryan Rotten lived there, and then Dave Parker. I'm going to call him Ryan.
Right.
Okay.
I didn't realize that that there was almost a year and a half in between me seeing Hatchet and then you guys and the rest of the world seeing it, because it was basically like the start of the festival run.
Yeah,
and I'm certain you guys didn't see any screeners. I think you had to wait until it premiered in a theater in New York, and we were all there. And I'm sitting behind you guys, like, I hope they like it after they've been hearing me talk about this thing for 18 months.
No, and that was great. We could touch upon that, and then we shall continue next time. But we had to wait until it was playing, and I don't know why. I was obsessed with, like, I didn't want to go see these movies in Long Island because our Long Island audiences sucked at that point. I was obsessed with going to see them on 42nd Street, and granted, we're talking about an AMC, so it's not like the 42nd Street of yesterday.
Hatchet comes to I don't think Hatchet even came to Long Island. It probably didn't. Still. Yeah, this was still, you have to go to 42nd Street or what was that theater attached to Two Boots? What was that?
Two Boots. It's called the Two Boots. Yeah. Two Boots. Yeah. Two Boots was a tiny theater, and they did a lot of Fangoria sponsored screenings too. But the Hatchet one, I think that was the first. And by the way, at that point, Icons of Fright was huge on MySpace. That's where we were connecting with people.
Yeah, I know.
So that was the first time that we had an Icons of Fright meetup. Was we were telling people via MySpace to come to this screening, 8:00 of Hatchet at this theater in the city. And I'll never forget it because Jay, being the showman that you are, you made somebody up to look like Victor Crowley, but you didn't know what Victor Crowley looked like. So we kind of had to go based on the description.
He sent us like a really
dark,
not clear picture because, like you said, like nobody had seen this fucking movie. Wasn't like this was it. It's not like it is now, And so I kind of like fudged it as best as I could. It came out awesome.
It looks good. And you cosplayed as Adam Green because you looked like him.
I remember
put on the glasses and stood with him, which I thought was I'll show you that picture. It might be in the book.
That.
And then we brought Paul Ehlers because we're like, we got to bring Madman to see Victor Crowley, and there's a photo of him choking your Victor Crowley guy,
right?
Have we skipped over the Paul Ehlers interview? Because we should definitely. Was that
no? It's we're gonna get to that for sure. It's just that the Hatchet screening happened much late, a year and a half after our Adam Green interview. But and the last thing that I'll remember is because we were all there for this screening. Paul Nomad, who worked for Dread Central, joined us, and we had a bunch of swag. And By the way, we didn't have permission to do this. We just got up before the movie started and did a horror Q&A.
We never had permission. We never had permission to do anything, and we
We
just
were
did.
like,
Yeah.
hey guys, before the movie starts, who wants to do some horror trivia? We've got some stuff to give away.
Yeah.
And
We'll get into all the test screenings that we went to that we didn't
Oh,
have
God.
permission to be in or
Yeah.
talk about, but you would
Yeah.
never get away with now. You would be you would be run out of town.
But I think
So-
it was our naivety and sincerity that we got away
Yeah.
with. So
Yeah.
we didn't know any better. We're like, yeah. So
That was a packed
yeah.
screening too. That was, I
Oh my
remember
God.
that was crazy.
And you know what? I'll never forget it because it worked at. I went and saw it several times in the 2-3 weeks that it played. The joke about Hofstra killed every time since we're
Yeah.
Long Island people, and
Yeah,
you only
yeah.
you'd have to be from Long Island to understand that joke,
Yeah.
but it worked for us every time. So, but anyway, so yeah, this is a good stop point for now, and we will delve
on.
into year 2006 and on into Behind the Mask, which was a big deal for us. And just really things really get exciting in this next
Yeah.
chapter for all of us.
Yeah,
So thank you for joining us again. We appreciate it. We hope you enjoy it. We hope you enjoy the book. And
Plug the
getting
book, Rob.
behind
Plug
scenes
the
of it.
book.
Yes.
Throw the you
Icons
got the
Of Fright.
hardcover. Well, you got
100 100
PDF.
interviews.
Oh.
100 interviews with legendary horror filmmakers. This is available on Amazon from Harker Press. They've got a ton of great books. And
Oh man, that's thick. Yeah, sorry, I haven't
I
seen you
don't
show it from the sides yet. I didn't realize how thick it is.
Whoa.
this
Yeah,
to
that's
me,
great.
this to me feels like, honestly, this feels like our yearbook.
Yeah, like when we
I look at it.
throw that down on a table and startle everybody.
Yeah.
So that's great.
Yes.
Yeah.
So join us again for the next episode of Icons of Fright, the podcast. Thank you.
See you later.
See you next week.
Is your home library feeling a little dull? Spice it up with some scary good books from Harker Press. We've got books on your favorite franchises and filmmakers loaded with new interviews and never-before-seen photos, many of which are also available on Audible. Learn more at harkerpress.com.